Once the first circle was complete, the Grand Matron spoke again. "The first circle is complete. Let the second circle be joined." This circle was much bigger, and I recognized many of the mages as heads of their houses. Amaya and Balaji were part of this circle, as were most of the Lagarel. If the circles were a pecking order of power, the Lagarel had a lot of heavy hitters. No wonder Seaful had been surprised when we took his hedges apart. The first and second circles are complete. Now let the third circle be joined. The only person I recognized in this circle was the craftsman from the tournament. I think I recognized a few of the others, but I couldn't swear to it. The first, second, and third circles are complete. Now let the fourth circle be joined. I gave Susan a questioning look. Was this us? She shook her head. The fourth circle was bigger than it looked and held all the rest of the mages from the gathering. Today, my fellow mages, we have a wonderful treat. Those which had been lost have been found. Those that have wandered have returned home. Those that were mundane have seen creation's light. Today, the Centaur Nation celebrates the Grand Circle with us for the first time. Let us make them welcome. All the mages in the first circles turned towards the centaurs and started clapping. Behold, NL, first mage of the Centaur Nation. The Grand Matron's voice was booming now. NL stepped forward gracefully, bowed, and started leading her mages down the right side of the fifth circle. The mages of the gathering went wild. They cheered and stamped their feet and shot bursts of light into the sky. They were really making the Centaur Llamas feel welcome and supported, and I felt so touched. Victor was clearly an anomaly. The house mages were good people. Behold, CL, first natural of the Centaur Nation. The cheering faltered for a moment. What was the natural doing here? Then it became even louder as CL stepped forward, bowing and led its naturals down the left side of the fifth circle. There were a lot of surprised looks, but overall they seemed to be excited and still going with it. Sandy made to move forward, but Susan shook her head and motioned for us to wait a moment. NL and CL marched around the circle, met at the back, and kept going. They continued leading their groups until they'd done a complete circle and were right back at the front with us again. The neat thing was, all the centaurs behind them now filled the fifth circle perfectly. I would have never thought about doing the crossover thing, but it organized the centaurs so nicely. It also left a gap at the very front between them, and Susan finally nodded at us to step forward and fill it. Sandy was beside NL, and I was now beside CL. This was perfect. I gave both of them a huge smile, and then all the centaurs faced the inner circle and gave them a deep bow. The inner mages bowed back, and the noise died down a lot. The first, second, third, fourth, and now fifth circles are complete, the Grand Matron boomed. The Grand Circle is assembled. We are ready to begin. Fifth circle, spin us up. The inner mages got quiet, and I saw lots of concerned looks. Could we really do this? Centaurs, to the right, NL called. She sounded small after all the cheers, but she was loud enough to be heard. All the centaurs smartly turned to the right, so they were now nose to tail with their neighbors. The inner mages started murmuring in surprise. What the heck were they doing? Centaurs, complete the circle, NL called. All the centaurs put their hands on the rump in front of them. Sandy and I were different, of course, but we still followed along and completed the circle. Centaurs, hickory dickory clop. All the centaurs started clopping in time to their marching rhythm. The sound of the centaurs clopping on stone was just awesome, and their magic started flowing even before Sandy officially spun us up. I was afraid the centaurs would get nervous now, because this was the big moment, and the flow wouldn't be as good as we'd practiced. Instead, the audience and the majesty of the moment made them even better. The flow was faster and more powerful than ever before. Someone in the inner circle started applauding, and soon all the mages were clapping and shouting and exclaiming in excitement. The magic we were spinning was so good I could physically see it. It looked like one of those fantasy movies where the horses are running toward the sunset and the light streams along their coats as the music swells. I loved it. I loved the speed of the magic flowing through me. I loved the connection I had to all the centaurs in the circle. I loved the way the magic sparkled and raced with the centaur llamas. I didn't have 4 feet, and I wasn't running through the plains, but for a moment I felt the joy and freedom of what that would be like. "Fourth circle, spin up," the Grand Matron called. The inner mages quickly got in position and started spinning too. They obviously had a lot more power in their circle than we had in ours, but I was happy to note that their magic wasn't as fast, and it certainly wasn't as smooth. Some of those 4th circle mages were terrible. They were like magic boulders, stopping the magic and forcing it around. "Third circle, spin up," the Grand Matron called. I felt it when they kicked into gear. There weren't any stinkers in their group, and the power was immense. "Second circle, spin up," the Grand Matron called, and I realized I didn't know what intense was. Wow. "First circle, spin up," the Grand Matron called, and it was like the sun rose. Seafull and those of his level let loose, and I was in awe. The Grand Matron was right. This was life-affirming. Then the Grand Matron kicked in. Her role was to join all the circles and harvest the power, and suddenly I was connected in some way to everyone there. It was like I was part of a heavenly choir. We all knew our parts, and we were all singing in perfect harmony. Our audience was the world, and we were sending light and life into the universe. If I hadn't already touched and connected deeply with every supernatural centaur present, I would have said this was the most connected I'd felt in my whole life. This grand circle was the ultimate self-expression of who I was and how I felt about the world. I felt like I was sitting beside a cosmic campfire, wrapped in a warm cosmic blanket, drinking cosmic hot chocolate, and hanging out with my cool cosmic friends. There were just no words to describe it. It was everything I hoped it would be and more. I don't know how long I stayed there spinning magic, but it felt like hours and hours. In the middle of all this spinning and power and awesomeness, I felt Bermuda. He wasn't leaving me, and he was still in my backpack. I got a sense from him that he was entertained by all this. He liked the feeling of all that power flowing over his fur, although he could care less about being connected to that many people. Being in touch with too many mages got in the way of a good nap. The best part for him seemed to be the running. He really liked the kick and feeling the centaurs were putting out. Running was good. Running was fun. Everyone should run. Party time. Finally, he lost interest in it all and closed his eyes. In the middle of all this incredible power and connecting experience, Bermuda snuggled up and took a nap. Eventually, the Grand Matron called for the end, and she shut it down in reverse order. Seafull and his circle stopped first, and the centaurs stopped last. There were tears and laughter and hugs all around. I hugged Sandy and CL and NL and several of the centaur and a bunch of the mages I didn't know. It didn't matter that I didn't know them. We'd done a circle together, and that was enough. I was a little shocked, but the Grand Matron opened a portal, and all the supernatural centaurs left right away. We'd already said goodbye, but still, I wasn't ready. We said goodbye to the Logorel. We touched branches, and I even hugged a few of them that would let me. That was just a little too much touching for most of them. The Dragonfly and Bermuda said goodbye to each other, and we all promised to keep in touch. Apparently, emotional goodbyes are a human thing, not a tree thing. So it wasn't long before Seafull wished us the best and led his Dumbrava away into the field. Pixie Girl and Susan had already left, so we walked back to ATAC with House Hyderabad. Had already left, so we walked back to ATAC with House Hyderabad. Amaya and Balaji had been to many of these, so they were used to the grand circle and saying goodbye afterwards. We got lots of hugs, promises to keep in touch, and then they were gone too. Soon it was just Sandy, me, and Bermuda in our suite. Our luggage was already packed. The food cart had been put away. The beds were made, and everything had already been cleaned up and ready for the next guest. "It's time to go," Sandy said gently. I realized I'd been holding her hand for a few minutes, just looking around one last time. I nodded in agreement, took a deep breath, and let it out. I had no idea these few days would be so action-packed and so meaningful. I had remade my Matrix, made my first Belchers, made my new Surfers, almost died a few times, fought in the arena a couple times, won a crap ton of pearls, lifted a curse, and made wonderful new friends. Wow. That was enough. It was time to go home. We gathered up our luggage and left the suite. We went past the amazing underwater decor one last time and took the manful staircase to the main lobby. We went out the huge doors, down the sweeping staircase, and back through the garden. The fair had packed up and left, so we walked down the main procession just like when we'd arrived. I didn't recognize any of the helpers at the gazebo, but the mages were heading home a lot faster than they had arrived. It wasn't long before it was our turn and the gateway home sprang into existence. I turned and looked one last time at House ATAC. She really was beautiful. And all the volunteers had been right. The first gathering was magical. It was something I would never forget. I took a mental snapshot and stored it in my heart. Then I reached over my shoulder and gave Bermuda's head a rub. He was still with me, sitting in his backpack like always. I knew he could make it home on his own, but I was very glad he was here with me now. He licked my ear to let me know he was doing well. Sandy gave me a smile, grabbed the handle of her suitcase, and stepped through first. I took a deep breath, grabbed my suitcase, and followed her. And there we go. That finishes out our time at the gathering. I will see you guys next week.